And now, please welcome CHCI Fellow Haiti Melchor.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Haiti Melchor, and I am a CHCI Public Policy Fellow presented by Amazon. I am delighted to be with you today for this closing plenary discussion titled Our Moment in History, Latino Power in American Entertainment and Media panel. In light of this conversation, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the ongoing strike of the Writers Guild of America in my hometown of Los Angeles, and recognize all the screenwriters that continue to tell the Latin stories on the big screen. On behalf of CHCI, I would like to thank Amazon, DoorDash, Toyota, and Warner Brothers Discovery for the generous support of this session. It is now my pleasure to introduce welcoming remarks from Tony Anaya. Tony Anaya is the Global Head of Government Relations at DoorDash. Please help me welcome Tony Anaya.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you today. My name is Tony Anaya, and I'm the Global Head of Government Relations at DoorDash. I'm delighted to be here and to be joining these accomplished speakers that you'll be hearing from shortly. When I think about Latino power in America, entertainment and media, I think about my life experiences growing up in New Mexico. With its high Latino population, I was blessed to be raised in a community where we had Latino role models. However, when I turned on the TV, yes, TV back then, I think we had 4 analog channels, not to age myself too much, or went to the movies, I didn't see many people who looked or sounded like me and my family. There was a big world outside of New Mexico, and that world was very, very different. Fast forward to today, and thanks to the tireless efforts of elected officials, media leaders like Pablo and Brenda, who you'll be hearing from, business leaders like Jerome and Maggie, organizations like CHCI, and the thousands and thousands of individuals who are personally committed to representing their communities to the best of their abilities, we're seeing more Latinos in media and in leadership roles. Our mission at DoorDash is to empower local economies. And to do this, we need to know who our communities are. We need to be involved with the communities, and we need to look like our communities. So when I started at DoorDash and we began our policy team, and we began setting up our policy team, one of the first things that we did was to reach out to CHCI. It's an amazing organization that we knew would help us connect to individuals and organizations and elected officials. And I'm proud to say, actually, we were able to recruit one of our federal team members, who is actually a CHCI fellow, Jose Mercado, who's here today. So thank you very much for producing such an amazing individual and helping us build out our team. We have a number of other initiatives at DoorDash that really focus on developing the Hispanic and Latino community. A program called Main Street Strong Accelerator, which works to operationalize and help develop emerging restaurants. We also are really proud to support the Dashers that are on our platform. This might surprise you, but over 4.4 million people have dashed on our platform this year. And these are people from all walks of life who are looking for supplemental earnings opportunities. And a high percentage of those come from the Latino community. And those Dashers are also supporting hundreds of thousands of restaurants around the United States. In closing, I'd just like to say that DoorDash is very proud to have served as a close partner with CHCI for several years. And I want to thank the CHCI team for all they do to develop the next generation of Latino leaders. As a proud Latino and a leader at DoorDash, I'm honored to be here, and I'm looking forward to hearing the insights, challenges, and successes our speakers share in creating and promoting diverse and authentic stories that reflect the richness and diversity of our culture. With that, I would just like to, again, acknowledge Jose, who's here, and then Cariana Suter Carvalho as well, our federal team. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope you have a great session.
Thank you, Tony Anaya, for your remarks and for joining us. It is now my pleasure to introduce welcoming remarks from Sebastián Ontiveros. Sebastián Ontiveros is the National Director of Multicultural Business Alliance and Strategy Group and Senior Manager for Consumer Engagement at Toyota. Please help me welcome Sebastián Ontiveros.
Good afternoon, everybody. I saw the cafecito bar out there. You can do a little bit better than that. Good afternoon. There we go. All right. I'm bringing us home, I promise. I'm the one thing standing between you all and a great panel. So welcome, everybody. On behalf of Toyota, welcome to this session on Latino power in American entertainment and media. We're looking forward to an exciting discussion with a panel of top professionals and executives in this space. Latinos have been making real strides in entertainment and media recently, and this is great to see. Last year, Latin music revenue topped $1 billion for the first time. That's a whopping 24% increase according to the Recording Industry Association of America. In film, we had the first Latino superhero movie this summer, Blue Beetle. Did anybody see that? Yeah, all right. What about A Million Miles Away? Yeah? Who saw it? Show of hands, A Million Miles Away. Okay, we're gonna have to up that number. If you haven't seen it yet, download Amazon Prime Video and start watching it. Earlier this year, we had 3 Latinos nominated for Oscars, one of them winning director Guillermo del Toro. We've also seen several, yeah, you can clap for Guillermo. We've also seen several hit TV shows featuring Latino leads, including The Last of Us, Netflix's Lincoln Lawyer. So clearly, Latinos are taking their rightful place in the creative industries. Of course, we all know that we still have a ways to go to achieve parity in entertainment and media, and how much representation matters. So from an automotive perspective, you may be asking yourself why Toyota is speaking here today. Well, you have to find a way to get to these places. But at Toyota, we know that achieving equity and having an inclusive approach makes our products more innovative and competitive, our customer service more robust and responsive, and it makes our team members happier and more productive because they come to work knowing they are valued for who they are and for their unique contributions. So it's good for society, yes, but as we've seen and you'll learn, it's also good for business. So without further ado, let's dive in and hear more from our panel of experts. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony Anaya and Sebastián Ontiveros. Now, I would like to introduce our moderator for today's discussion, Pablo Valdivia. Pablo is an audience editor at NPR who is focused on elevating and telling Latino stories across digital, radio, and podcast platforms. Previously, Valdivia was BuzzFeed's senior Latino culture editor, where he helped build BuzzFeed's Latino brand called Pero Like, and oversaw an editorial operations for it. Please help me welcome Pablo Valdivia.
Hello, everyone. Really nice to be here today, and really excited to see all your faces. Really excited to see a bunch of Latino faces. It's really nice to have everyone in one room together, so I'm really excited about this. Thank you to Tony and Sebastián for their opening remarks. And thank you to CHCI for hosting this conference and for allowing us to have this space to talk about the power that we as Latinos have in entertainment and media. I'm particularly fascinated by the word representation and how it's evolved over time and over the past 10 years or so. And I'm really excited to dig in with our panel about what this word means and how it's evolved over time. So I want to bring them out for you now. So please give a hand for Brenda Victoria Castillo, who's the president and CEO of the National Hispanic Media Coalition. Next, welcome Jerome Kaur, who's the head of US and worldwide DEIA content at Amazon Studios. And last but not least, please say hi to Margie Moreno, who's the senior vice president of current series at Warner Brothers Television. All right, hi everyone.
Hi.
I'm excited to have y'all here. Titles are one thing, but how it is in practice is another. So if you could go around again and introduce yourselves and say what it is you do exactly within your organizations, I would love to hear it. So starting with you, Brenda.
Hi, everyone. I'm elated to be here with all of you today. I flew in from Los Angeles, Brenda Victoria Castillo, President and CEO of the National Hispanic Media Coalition, the first woman president and CEO. I say that all the time. Hi, Diane. I'm Native, Latina, feminist, and I go by she, her, and ella. I lost my voice, so it's going to go in and out, and I apologize ahead of time. I want you to know why I lost my voice, because Friday night I was at a concert singing, right? Saturday I was celebrating El 16 with 7 boxing matches, and of course those mariachis singing again. Latinos consume entertainment more than any other ethnicity. And believe me, I put down a lot of money for this weekend. NHMC is a civil and human rights organization, and we were founded to eliminate hate, discrimination, and racism towards Latinos. We do a lot of policy work here in Washington, D.C. We believe in representation from the White House to Hollywood. Why? Because the decisions that are made here in D.C. affect entertainment. The way entertainment decides how they're going to show us out to the public is how we're perceived and how we're treated in real life. So I'm elated that I was invited to be here. Thank you.
Nice to have you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jerome Kaur. My pronouns are he, him. I am also a native Angelino. I grew up in Compton, California, so a little suburb of LA. I like saying suburb because it makes it sound like it was not the hood, but it was great. But I grew up in Compton, California, and at Amazon Studios, I lead the US and worldwide team that's focused mainly on content. We're the only DEIA team in Hollywood that's specifically focused on our content and our customers. We're not HR. I love my HR partners, but couldn't be me. And so what we really look to do is make sure that all of our content is inherently inclusive and that our productions look like the world we live in today. I'm so happy to be here for 2 big reasons. One, I think I said earlier, I'm so happy to finally be able to say I'm Hispanic. I grew up like you were not Hispanic unless you were full-blooded Hispanic. So it's so great to see as we continue to grow older and grow up and really get to see our own humanness and all of our stories. So I'm Black and Salvi, and it's just so great to be amongst all of y'all. And just, in my, thank you, in my Hispanicness, quote unquote. But also I'm so happy to be here because I'm here today while A Million Miles Away is the #1 movie on Prime Video US. So we are, so excited. Seeing that movie go from a script and getting to meet Jose and have the conversation of really what he wanted, and having our amazing Mexican woman director who really wanted to make a movie that was a love letter to migrant farm workers, being able to be behind that and is just amazing. So shout out to all of our team that worked on A Million Miles Away. And if you have not seen it, as Sebastian said earlier, I promise I'll give you that $20 later, please download it. It's free for Amazon Prime customers to watch today. So thank you for having me here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Margie Moreno. I'm the Senior Vice President of Current Programs with Warner Brothers Television Studios. I'm very excited to be here today for a very personal reason. I would probably typically be on your side of the table because I actually went to college, was about to go into law school at one of the schools nearby, spent a year working on the Hill here in DC, best year of my life, I gotta tell you, and at the very last second decided that for me, the way to create social change was to do it through content creation. So where I was supposed to take a turn to the right and work on the Hill, I decided to make a turn to the left and go into content creation by working in the industry. So for me, this panel is very important because it's about content activating social change. And that is what I have based my career on, and that is why I'm excited to be here with all of you.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here, and we will have a Q&A portion at the end, but if you don't feel like waiting till the very end to ask your question, please feel free to tweet it, use the hashtag CHCIHHM23. But I want to throw it back for a second, just with all of y'all, and this is a question to all of you. I'll start with you, Margie. But when was the first time y'all remember seeing yourselves represented on screen? If you can remember that moment.
Okay, I can very distinctly remember that moment because To this day, it is my favorite movie of all time, which is Selena. Selena resonates with me on so many levels, not just because it was the first time that I truly felt seen in terms of a blockbuster movie, but it was the first time that I felt my family, my culture, my values being represented in such a distinct way that I had never seen before, that I realized that that was my path and my reason why. So Selena to me meant music, it meant family, it meant food, it meant the cultura that I never had the opportunity to celebrate. And that was the reason why I got into the industry.
Love that.
I love that movie still.
Still, to this day, on the 110th repeat that I've watched.
It's a bra. It's like my favorite thing ever. I think for me, it was New York Undercover, because I think when I was growing up, if you were a Hispanic or Latino on TV, you were Mexican, you were fair skinned, and that was it. And so New York Undercover was the first time I got to see that there were other Latinos. You weren't just Mexican. There were so many different complexions, and I mean, there probably weren't the best portrayals, but that is definitely the first time I realized, like, oh, there are people who look like me, who are Hispanic, who have their roots, and yeah, so I love that show. I followed all of their careers forever, and so yeah, New York Undercover.
Great. Brenda?
So I guess I'm a little older.
That's fine, that's fine.
So mine is Wonder Woman with Linda Carter. It's probably before your time. But, she fought injustice. She had her bracelet. I have mine from New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And she had this lasso that she would whip around. It would make people tell the truth and obey her. I love that power.
It's a good power to have. And I was just talking earlier about how representation, the word itself, has evolved a lot, especially in the last 2 years. I personally think that for me, representation went from wanting to see myself on screen to then wanting to see myself in good stories on screen. So I'm just curious to know what your own relationship with that word is and how it kind of informs the decisions you make within your own work.
So representation does matter, and I want us to think more broadly in leadership positions, C-suite positions, board of directors, and studio ownership. And I'll give you a couple examples. One is Cesar Conde, that is in charge of NBC, the news group, the whole news group. He was brought on with that chairman title in May of 2020, and you saw an increase in leadership positions, Latinos in leadership, anchors, correspondents, etc. We just got in Ana Gomez as the FCC commissioner last Monday. In 22 years, there hasn't been a Latina. We have not been represented in 22 years, I'm sorry. And I expect the same from her. I expect her to look out for our community and marginalized communities.
I think for me, when I think about representation, the word ties in so much for me as in authenticity as well. I think to your point again, when we were first talking about representation, it was really checking a box, and it was like, oh, there's a Latino there, there's a black person there, there's this, there's a queer guy over there in the corner, kind of thing, and it was just, oh, we checked the box. And then we started talking about, well, what portrayals are we really showing? And so are we doing the same stereotypes? Are they just foils for someone else's piety? Like, how are we making sure that people really have full, nuanced characters and can breathe and can really be parts of a story and move a story arc? So for me, that's my relationship with it. Is it authentic? Are they eating menudo every morning? Like, that's so annoying. Like, you can tell, like, no Latino person ever touched this if that's happening. It's like, but is it authentic, and is it something that it can recall an old school memory from your childhood? If that is what our stories are telling, that to me is representation.
Much like Jerome, I completely agree with what he said. It's about nuanced characters. And we have gotten away from doing that checklist model, meaning, do we have that stereotype? Check. Do we have that person filling that bucket? Check. No. The conversation should be, are we representing the right perspective to create an authentic world, an authentic character? And those are the kind of conversations that are happening now. Those are the conversations where people in the room are questioning what type of background this character has. That to me is about representation. It's not about the check mark. It's about authenticity and nuance.
And to your point about authenticity, we've definitely come a long way when it comes to telling authentic stories. We used to have people telling stories for us, and now we're telling our own stories. So I'm curious to know how you think the industry has evolved from that time to today, and what are its failures?
I'll talk about how, first of all, the industry has evolved. So, in my opinion, people understand that for something to emotionally resonate, it has to be nuanced. It has to be real. And for that to happen, it has to come from a very personal place. So now when we're having conversations about story, we're asking, are the right people in the room who have that personal connection? So as an example, there was a set of directors that we were looking at to possibly bring into an upcoming season of a show that was a very established show going into its 3rd season. We took a look at the show. We said, we need to bring something fresh, something new, create more of a broader audience so that people understand and resonate with these characters. And it doesn't mean inserting a Latino character. It doesn't mean inserting a check mark. It means what perspective are we not including that will be meaningful and reflective of the potential audience. So we actually ended up bringing in a Latino director who I had the privilege of knowing from a short film that he had done through an organization that I was familiar with. He was a very well accomplished director internationally, but he'd never been able to break into general market. It was because we needed him more than he needed us that he had his first opportunity to break in and do a general market hit show. And because of that, now that's a pathway for another perspective to represent that authentic voice and connection with the audience who happens to be Latino. He's not being positioned as the Latino director. He happens to be Latino.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, so when I started this work 3 years ago, it was really hard to have the conversation about race. In any conversation, it was just so hard. It didn't matter what we were saying, what community we were talking about. You just saw everyone in the room tense up whenever we talked about race. And it didn't matter if they were white people or other Latino people, other black people. Everyone was like, oh my God, I can't believe, they're talking about it. And I also don't necessarily, I don't mince my words. So I'm very direct when I talk about race. And so I remember just seeing all of this tension. And so similar to like using an example was, I'm gonna go back to A Million Miles Away. When we got the rights for A Million Miles Away, actually a black woman was a creative executive on that. Amber Raspberry was the creative executive on it, and she really wanted to make sure that there was lived experience on the script, there's lived experience, on the director's chair, there was lived experience on that set. We shot it in Mexico. We had a ton of Mexican people on the crew, and it was just really interesting to watch. Just 3 years ago, that conversation would have been an uphill battle. I would have had to pull up graphs and all of these things, and here's how we're saving money on doing this, right? The conversation was so easy. It was just, wait, is that what you want? And Amber said, yeah, this is what I want. This is what Jose wants. And we just made it happen. And there was never a conversation about, well, are you doing it to save money? Well, is she the right person to direct this movie? Like, obviously she's the right person to direct this movie. She had won several awards in Mexico, and this wasn't her first movie. But it was just, the conversation has just completely become so much easier. I think where we still fail people, though, is there's still maybe 10 people that we know that are Latino directors. There's still maybe 10 Latino writers that we all go to. There's still maybe 10, Latino actors and things like, there's still that. And I'm looking forward to the day where I say, we see a casting breakdown, we send it out, and we get a ton of submissions versus we get the same submissions from the same agents every single time. So I still think we failed that way, but I'm really excited about where we're going, and I think we're getting there, and it's a very exciting time in the industry right now.
Right.
Yeah, so I agree both with Marge and Jerome. When it comes to the casting, and agents, I'm really interested, like, I don't know of another like another industry that has a need for a market that would continue to have these contracts with agents that are not bringing them who they want, that they keep bringing the same people. Because any other business would go and look for other agencies. And there's plenty of Latino-owned agencies. So I would like to see us get to that point, you know? I've seen change. Like I said, I'm a little older. We used to go out to the studios and try to reach out, and now they're coming to us at NHMC. They come to us for consulting. They come to us even before they hire a director. This is our story. What do you think if we hired so-and-so? Well, he's Spaniard, and there's a story about colonization. I wouldn't hire a Spaniard director, right? And I had to explain why. But I so appreciate them, you know, coming to us first. So I have seen change. I mean, you know, a lot of the studios are, I mean, Blue Beetle, my God, our first DC comic, so exciting. For our children, even for me. I mean, I'm thinking for Halloween, I'm going to be Blue Beetle, you know. We got, someone mentioned the Lincoln Lawyer, even the Spanish language audience, Televisa Univision, they know that Latinos wanted more Latino-led content, and they created VIX, their streaming service now.
And to that point, we obviously know that Latinos are a mega superpower when it comes to the success of a show or a film, but oftentimes our community is also very varied and very fragmented, and Cubans aren't Puerto Ricans, aren't Mexicans, aren't Salvi, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm just curious from your perspective, how do we then tell Latino stories in a way that is mindful of also these varied experiences?
Yeah, I think I love that you started that way, because it's very true, right? Like I think, and I think that's what we've seen fail with a lot of strategies, is people look at Latinos as a monolith, as not, like there's 30 countries, like when you say Latino, and you know, even in our, you know, internally we're always fighting, is it Latino, Hispanic, what it, like all, right? So there's so many differences and so many different nuances, and I think for us, the way we're looking at it is to tell specific stories that have broad appeal, right? So again, A Million Miles Away is a very specific story that you can be Mexican and be like, oh, I want to watch that. You can be Puerto Rican and want to watch it. You can be white and want to watch it. You can be anything and want to watch such an inspiring story. Also like Red, White, and Royal Blue, telling that story where you have a Mexican American, you know, president's son, like, and really try to, and who's queer. And so I think what we're looking at is how do you tell all of these different stories under the same roof, and just consistently looking for opportunities to be as specific as possible, but have broad appeal with characters. So that's the way we're thinking about it.
Right.
I think what Jerome said in terms of specificity is hitting the nail on the head. If you are going to represent a character that has a Dominican background with a best friend who is Puerto Rican, that makes sense. If you are going to put a Dominican character in a reggae concert with somebody from El Salvador and Mexico who is doing Tejano music, that doesn't make sense. The key is having somebody who's part of that content creation being able to speak to it and raise the question, because there's so many times that we see stories being told to target an audience or to incorporate an audience, and they're missing the mark because they think they're doing the right thing when in fact they're not understanding the nuances of, again, as Jerome said, going deep and being specific. So to me, that's really where the opportunity is, in leaning in to the authenticity by having the right voices in the room.
Right.
Now I'm going to go back to Blue Beetle, because we continue to have this conversation, and just conversation I had recently with somebody who's non-Latino. So they just saw the film and they were really related to the grandmother, because he has a grandmother like that. And he wants to know what, you know, now he wants part two. He wants to know that grandmother's background. I don't know if you saw the film or not. And he really related to his culture, was his family is very close. And the whole premise of Blue Beetle starts off with the family. And that's where the strength is and the power, right?
Right, right. And the VIX, I feel like everyone, when that VIX came out, everyone screamed in my theater. I don't know about everyone else's. Obviously, y'all are very important people within your organizations who, Margie, y'all are very important people, I'm telling you now. But have you, within your roles, you've obviously have some sort of ability to then mentor people younger than yourselves and also get rid of any obstacles you potentially faced within your come up. So I'm just curious if you've created any pathways within your organization for underrepresented voices and maybe given opportunities to people that you wished you had when you were coming up in your industry.
Yes, yes, and yes. I mean, so I'm fortunate enough to be part of a studio that believes in investing in a pipeline of who is the next generation. It is my job as hopefully a thought leader in that conversation to bring the right voices so that there is a diverse sampling of that pipeline. So for me, it is my responsibility to shepherd and mentor writers. It is my responsibility to shepherd and mentor upcoming executives. Within the entertainment industry, there are many amazing organizations such as NHMC, such as NALEAP. There are many organizations that offer community and a support system to those that want to get in the industry. However, there are sometimes unsaid things that do not get shared in larger conversations. So one thing that a friend of mine created was an organization called the Latina Squad that is specifically about Latina creators, executives, who came together to create their own personal network to share resources, names, situations. How can I help you on a very intimate, personal level? That organization that was literally just made by bringing somebody into a cafecito has now grown to over 80 Latina creative executives. That is amazing. That was organic. That was done because of the need for community and a personal connection. Likewise, through Warner Brothers Television, we feel it's our responsibility to bring in new voices. So we take general meetings with everyone to make sure that we are not missing and closing the door for the next person that should be represented at the table.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think, so I work at Amazon. Obviously, data is king at Amazon. And so we use data a lot to talk about the work that I do. So Latino people and Black and brown people in general between the ages of 18 and 24 stream 8 hours a day of content on their mobile devices. 8 hours a day. 3 times as much as their white counterparts. So when I have a conversation about who we're working with, the content we're making, I'm like, it's not about a 10-year plan, it's a 3-year plan. If we are not making content for those folks right now, we don't have a business in 3 years. So that really changes the conversation we have. And so I'm really excited to say that we have doubled down on our commitment to Latino audiences and to Latino filmmakers. This year we had we worked with the Latino Film Institute to do a work in progress fund where we funded 3 filmmakers, 3 Latino, actually there are way more filmmakers, it was but 3 different films, and actually are giving them support to actually really help them complete their films. We also funded the LFI's Youth Cinema Project, which takes high schoolers, middle schoolers and high schoolers, and actually had them create a movie. So partnering with an organization like LFI is amazing because it's the only organization right now that literally has a program from start to finish. They start in preschool and they actually have people that have graduated that are actually on the Oscar shortlist. And so that's what we're doing. We love it. Again, to your point, it's my job to shepherd new voices. So of course we have a relationship with Gloria Calderon-Kellett. There was a writer on Gloria's show with Love, which if you haven't seen it, please watch With Love. It's amazing. Its 2nd season is so funny. And there was a writer in the 1st season, Juliana Tavernes, who's a non-binary indigenous writer, and Gloria came to us and was like, you have to talk to this writer, you have to, they are so amazing, they're so smart, and that became our first overall deal with a non-binary person. They happen to be indigenous Hispanic, right? And so that's really amazing, and just being able to say, hey, I think we should go look over here, and doing that and working with the studio. I love Amazon Studios. I couldn't do this work anywhere else, where if I say, hey, I think we should look at this. Everyone is like dropping what they're doing and going to go look at it, and making a deal like that is amazing, and I'm really excited to keep going and all the things that we're doing. But yeah, we're 100% looking to create more pathways for Latino filmmakers, because to your point, not only do we want Latino filmmakers to be telling Latino stories, we want Latino filmmakers to tell all stories. You know, they shouldn't just be beholden to Latino stories, but like imagine a Latino person on Mrs. Maisel, like directing that. That would be so cool. Like that's really what we want to see. And so that's where we're committed to.
So at NHMC, we have a 20-year-old writers program, and our writers are now showrunners. We have the Latinx Dream Showcase, where we don't just showcase the writers, we showcase the actors, below the line crew, sound, directing, DPs, et cetera. But we also have a media and advocacy paid fellowship program that we have here in DC and in Hollywood. But we love collaborating with our colleagues, with Lalif, Latinx House. So we do a lot of collaboration, and Ruben Garcia, who's here in the audience, he has been bringing us together more and more, because there's power in numbers, and we've seen really good results.
Right, and it sounds like obviously all of you are making a lot of headway and creating paths for these underrepresented voices. But I'm curious, just as yourselves, how has your own culture informed the decisions? English is my second language. The decisions that you make in your own work, or even the path. I mean, you kind of spoke to how Selena really made you want to get into storytelling and you know, but how has then your own culture informed that kind of decision making to date?
So I'm going to speak about an experience that I had a few years ago when I was in a different organization and was tasked with starting our first slate of scripted programming. Again, this is a different organization. And it was a hard initiative, because if you are starting with a blank slate, there are so many places you could start. And the question is, where do I start? Literally, it's a blank slate. What do you do? And the thing that I did is I asked myself, okay, the girl that watched Selena and was inspired to be that on the screen and to create more of those stories, what personally resonated with you? And there were two things that immediately got to me, and those were family and music. So I put together a slate that was led by a story of 4 friends who come to the United States with the opportunity to be signed to a music label, and all they have each other as their family are themselves. And what does that premise offer? And so for me, it's really about looking into my culture. What is it that I personally resonate, and how do I bring that to storytelling? The nuances in the storytelling are what's going to make it unique to me in my personal experience, and what will connect with the potential audience. And it's those details that make it feel exceptional storytelling.
Yeah, I think I'll try to make this as quick as possible. I think first of all, for me, my culture specifically, I wear so many different identities. I'm Black, I'm Latino, I'm gay, I have a physical disability. And so that informs the fact that like when I'm in the room for every single historically excluded community. I have to be just as loud for the character who's Black and gay as I am for the character that's an indigenous woman. One, because that's my job, and I'm so grateful I get paid. I can't believe I get paid to be like, that's racist, y'all. It's amazing. I'm so grateful for that. But you know, that number one, I get paid to do it, but number two, because people are looking at what I'm doing, right? And so people are always looking to see like who am I caring about? I'm caring about everyone. And the reason why I do it for content specifically is because a show changed my entire life. A show that premiered on Netflix that became Netflix's like big thing, Orange is the New Black, changed my entire life. Seeing Uzo Adobo as Crazy Eyes changed everything for me. I remember watching the show late night. I was definitely drunk. I definitely drunk watching the show. Like, I'm gonna binge this. And I just remember watching a scene with Uzo, and I called my brother. I'm like, oh my God, Mom is Crazy Eyes. Like that's who our mom is. Our mom is Crazy Eyes. And the reason why it changed my life is because my mother and I were not very close because of her autism, because of her bipolar disorder, and like all the things that come with that. And even though people have mental illness and and mental disabilities, sometimes they hurt other people, right? And those disabilities unfortunately have them hurt you. And so we were not close until I got to see her humanness on a show. And I'm so happy. We lost my mom 2 years ago. But the last 5 years of her life, I was able to be her friend. And without that, I don't know, without seeing that scene at that moment, shout out to Tequila as well, without seeing all of that in that moment, I don't know where I would be with my grief with my mother, because I'm so at peace to know that she lived a full life, and I got to know all these things about her because of a show. And so when I'm in a room and I'm thinking about these characters, I live and I breathe our characters so much. Even those characters that you have like the boys. I love Homelander. He's the absolute worst version of who we are, right? As a country, he is the worst version of who we are. And I hope that someone is watching it somewhere and saying, do I do that? Do I sound like that? Do I look like that? And maybe inspecting themselves. So I think that's how my culture and my personal life really impacts what I do every day.
Love that. Beautiful story.
Thank you for letting me share that. Thank you.
I just realized, and you were talking about how you related to a character. Just recently, you mentioned With Love with Gloria Collette.
Yes.
The aunt, she plays the aunt.
Yes.
I have 2 nephews, and she's the crazy aunt, right? And, my nephews are always telling me, and it's the tone, Tia, like auntie, And I finished that weekend watching the whole series, and I text Gloria, Gloria, this is it. I really related to your character, the aunt. I wouldn't expect anything less of you, Brenda, she says. Oh my God. So I'm still relating to characters, right? My culture, my upbringing, being a woman, a Latina, growing up in an environment that violent injustice, that is why I'm sitting here today in the position that I do. Because I really am empathetic for those who don't have a voice, for those who can't protect themselves. So that is what I do, why I do it, and will continue to do it. But I think the bigger picture is that I think all of us needs to work more on empathy. Empathy for each other, empathy for other people that don't look like us, that irritate us, right? We really have to, in today's world and leading up into 2024, I'm very concerned, we really have to have empathy as human beings towards other human beings.
Yeah, I agree. And Jerome, to your point, I really loved how you talked about you have a lot of identities that you carry with you into rooms, and oftentimes you might be the only person who is essentially speaking for a community of people in that room. And I'm sure we've all experienced that in this room, where you're the only person in a boardroom or a small meeting, it doesn't matter. It's a lot of work to really speak on behalf of your community. So I'm just curious how you navigate that through your own spaces, because I know you probably had to deal with that within your own careers. So how do you navigate that without misspeaking, I guess, and letting that bog down your own work? Because a lot of the times it is a weight that you have to carry, but how do you then just make it work, I guess, is my question. I'm asking advice for myself at this point.
I think you have to not care. I think, like you said, how do you make sure you don't misspeak? I think you have to not care about misspeaking. Like, I lead with kindness and learning at the forefront of everything that I do. Like, I don't believe, in general, I don't believe that everything someone does is cognizant, right? If you believe that racism and sexism and all the isms and phobias are systemic, you can't believe that the person who's actually doing the offense is always aware that they're doing it. Because that's the idea of it, is that it's systemic, right? So it's invisible. They're not necessarily aware they're doing it. So when you start from that place, and I'm always starting from an educational place and saying like, how can I help you? Or walk me through this, or that's really, I'm very curious, or that's very interesting that you didn't think about this other thing, or do you know what you just said? Or like, and do you understand why that impacts people the way it does? So that's number one, start and lead with kindness. But number two, don't care. Like, I love learning. Like, I have no problem. I have a team of amazing people who teach me something every single day, who will call me out if I say something wrong. I was moderating a panel. I was getting ready to moderate a panel, and one of the actors on the panel it was autistic, and so we're sitting there going through the pre-panel, and she kept telling me why she couldn't answer my questions. Like, I'm autistic, so that's how her disability shows up. And so when I was telling my team about it, I was like, yeah, so I might not ask her too many questions because then it'll be off the rails. And one of my colleagues legitimately said, that was ableist. Like, that was ableist. So I put my foot in it. I'm the guy that gets paid to not be ableist, and yet I was being ableist. And I'm so happy she said that, because it changed the way I went into that panel. And she was amazing. Watching this woman discuss her experiences and her, like, how she moves through life, I'm so happy I listened to my colleague and wasn't ableist and did ask her questions and probed. And we dealt with, of course, the roundabout, because she already told us that's what's going to happen. But just doing that. So don't be afraid. Like, you're going to step in it. I think people care more about your intentions than your impact sometimes. And so say you're sorry and move on.
I agree with everything Jerome just said on so many levels, especially in terms of leading with sorry. There are so many times where I find myself in a situation where people look to me as the authority figure. I'm not. And I try to deflate the room by starting a conversation from a place of curiosity. And specifically, there is a project that we're working on at the moment that incorporates 4 different cultures in the world that we're telling. And all of them are very different worlds in terms of culture, in terms of communities. It's specifically immersed in the world of deaf culture, which in and of itself has many nuances. And I love being part of this project because it gives me the opportunity to lead with curiosity. And by leading with curiosity, I ask many questions, knowing that I'm going to be wrong most of the time. But by putting myself out there, again, leading with curiosity, it gives you the right to question and come to a collaborative relationship. Someone once told me, if you have any tension in a situation and you're trying to make a point with somebody, instead of saying, I think, say, I feel. Because people will find it more challenging to go against an emotion than to go against a thought. So I use that in my vernacular on a daily basis because I am very emotive. I feel a lot. And in my conversations, when I'm asking my colleagues why we're not reflecting a certain point of view, I feel the need to answer, many questions based on that. So that's my shorthand.
So Jerome used the words not care. And I say don't choose fear. Because I think what happens, especially, you're getting a good paycheck, you fear losing your job. But you can't choose fear because then you're going to regret that you didn't say what you needed to say, right? You're going to hold it. You're going to carry it. And you can be bold and straightforward, but respectful at the same time with a good tone. But you're going to feel good. For me, it's a little different. I can just be straightforward, bold, and tell them, no, this is not acceptable, blah, blah, blah. And this is why. But even myself, I'll do something like you do. That's interesting. Well, what I'm hearing is that you said blah, blah, blah. And, well, no, that's not what I said. Oh, okay, what did you say? And then they'll backtrack a little bit. So it's strategy, it's educating, looking at it as an opportunity to educate folks in the room.
Great. Y'all mirrored something that Becky G said recently in a upcoming Tiny Desk interview, so look out for that on NPR. But yeah, she talked about how it's not about what I say, but how I say it with people. So she's direct, but she's saying it with kindness and empathy and just, knowing exactly what you want to say. So I'm glad y'all mirror Becky G's philosophy as well.
I like how you called us important and then you just name dropped Becky G out of there. Like,
I didn't do the interview.
I was in an interview with Becky G. Like,
I wasn't doing the interview, but I was present for it.
Okay.
So I was in the room. Okay, so I have one final question before we get to a Q&A. But I just basically want to know, we talked about how far we've come in terms of representation and how it's evolved and how we do still have a long way to go, but we're slowly getting there, hopefully at a quicker pace than we have been in the last 100 years. But individually, what are your own hopes and dreams for the next generation of Latino storytellers, creatives, executives, and other industry leaders?
I think for me, my hope and dream is that the next time a Gloria walks into the room to pitch a show, she sees herself reflected. I think that is number one for me. And then number two is that all of us create more opportunities below the line. There are so many amazing crafts below the line and behind that camera that is just needing some more influence and some more culture behind it. You have no idea how many times I'm on a set and I'm like, who said yes to that? Like, kind of thing. And so I'm really excited to see more people understand the industry a lot better. Because before, I think we were always, you either wanted to be a star, and then writers finally became a thing. So everyone's like, I want to be a writer, I want to be a writer, I want to be an actor. And now we're starting to see people say, I want to be a producer, or I want to be a DP. And like the more Latino people we have telling our stories, not just in the writer's room, but also on that set, the more authentic we're gonna be and the more nuanced portrayals we're gonna see of ourselves. So that's really my hope.
Right.
My hope is that they're running the studios, they own the studios, and they're on the board of the directors.
Absolutely.
That's what I want.
My hope is that we don't have to lead with calling something Latino first, that it happens to be an amazing director who's Latino, that it happens to be an amazing story that features Latino voices, that features Latino storylines, that it happens to be amazing in and of its own right, and it happens to be Latino. And Latino becomes part of the general vernacular, not a check mark.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with everything y'all said, so I'm just gonna go with that. All right, so we have a few minutes for a Q&A, so we do have a very specific amount of time, so be concise with your questions. So if you have any questions about Latino contributions to entertainment and media, I think we have people with mics. There's some hands over there. And if you can say your name and where you're from, or what organization you're from.
Yeah. My name is Khadija Ali. I'm with the League of Women Voters, and I really enjoy just consuming everything on the platforms and from the studios that you guys represent. And I'm not Latina, but as a Muslim, I know that how important it's been for just diverse and minority writers to be in the industry and produce amazing stories. Something that I've been curious about just over the course of this conversation is the ongoing writers' strike. And so I guess my question is, how are you considering the needs and demands of the writers' strike, especially as they pertain to the future of Latinx and other minority and diverse writers, so that they can have sustaining careers in the writer's room and in these studios, and to make that possible for future generations of writers and creatives? Thank you.
Yeah, you know I can't answer that. No, I don't know. We're here to talk about Latinos in entertainment, so unfortunately I can't answer that question. Can you answer that one?
I cannot answer the question other than to say, look, everybody really wants to get back to work on both sides, writers, actors, us. We so want to get back to work. And I can also say that the thing that I personally miss is being able to speak to these writers that were coming up, these baby writers that are coming up, and working with them and mentoring them and being in a place to set them up for success in the future. So personally, I'm just excited to get back to that when we come to a resolution and everything's resolved, which I hope is soon, because I just want to get back to storytelling.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree, Margie.
Thank you. Any other? Go for it.
That
Yes.
too. As a civil and human rights organization, we definitely stand by the creators. We think everyone should have equitable pay. But I think and then at this time, during this time, a lot of the actors and writers cannot promote their work. And this is our time. Latinos have so many films coming out and series. So this is why, again, I'm going to mention Ruben has brought 27 organizations together who put a letter in Variety saying, we'll be your voice. So us advocacy organizations are really trying to promote as much as possible Latino-led films and shows that are streaming and on TV also. And we're doing a good job. This is why, the films are #1 this weekend on Amazon, Netflix, and all these shows, because we're promoting it. So we are the voice for those who can't voice. But I want you all to look at the bigger picture, okay? As a national leader, it's just not the writers and the actors that are in strike. The automobile industry, they're on strike. Starbucks is on strike. Some of the hotels are on strike. So what is happening in the United States of America that workers feel that they're not being paid equitably and not being treated right? That's the bigger picture, and we're here in DC, and that's what we should be thinking about.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? One right here up front.
As a parent who, I'm sorry. As a parent who's funding a young film student at one of the film schools in California, how do you guys interact to help build that pipeline? Because they are in that below the line interest in editing. And so, I talk to them, my daughter, frequently, fully invested in that, kind of her sponsorship of being into this industry, but clearly interested in her having full-time employment afterwards. So how are you guys reaching into those film programs, especially to make sure that they're more diverse, but also to help lift up those kids who are kids of color who want to really break into this industry?
Well, I will start with, first, a lot of us most studios have relationships with the schools. And so a lot of our executives go out and talk to them, and we get to know them that way. But if I could give you advice to give your daughter is to remember to network across. So one of the big things that we are looking at are film festivals, local film festivals. All of the studio executives go to them. And I can tell you, a lot of times we walk away from a film being like, who edited that? Like, that pacing was so awesome. I think there was, for instance, Zola, the movie Zola. Zola was an amazing movie, but I remember walking away being like, who is the editor? Get me a general with them right now, because it was so amazing to watch that pacing happen. Same thing for the Hot Cheetos movie. It's like the editor, there's so many different spans of time that they had to deal with, and the pacing was just so great. The transitions were awesome, and it just was amazing. And so get into local film festivals. So she should be talking to students that are of her age right now that are working on their student films and edit those, and that's how she'll get a name for herself. And then lastly, look at the union. So for instance, there's the PGA Association, things like that. They often have meet and greets with folks, and so that's how she can get a mentor that's specifically an editor as well that would bring her into the fold.
I'm going to talk very quickly about a personal situation that I think your daughter will be able to relate to. So I went to a film school in California, and one of the things that I personally benefited most from was what Jerome just said, meaning networking across disciplines. So one of my closest collaborators was actually an editor who was an apprentice to an Academy Award nominated editor. To tell you that I learned a lot from that person is an understatement. So again, cross-networking across multiple disciplines is invaluable for your daughter's future. And then number two, there are many organizations that provide mentorship and networking opportunities, including I'm part of Women in Film, and we specifically have a mentorship for below the line women, and specifically an editors group. So we are diving deep into helping people on a very personal level, and there are many organizations, including NHMC, LALIF, NALIP, who have the same types of programs. So I would highly encourage your daughter to find those networking opportunities because they will pay off tenfold in the future.
Yeah, networking, because I bet you the first job she gets in the industry is going to be because she was referred by somebody in the industry. That's Hollywood, it's who you know.
It is definitely a relationship business, yeah.
Any other questions? We have one right here on the left.
I believe it was Ms. Castillo who mentioned the importance of where we are physically located in Washington, D.C., and the role that I think many of us play in the policy space. So my question is, as the narrative surrounding the Latino community can sometimes be controlled and steered in a negative direction, what role do you see as storytellers? What role do storytellers play in actively combating that narrative and reclaiming it for good in the Latino community?
Take that? Oh, no, go ahead. You know, one of the reasons we focus on media is it's one of the most powerful institutions that can change somebody's mind, beliefs, in another population. See what I'm saying? And when we work on media, it's just not media entertainment. It's social media, video platforms like YouTube. And believe me, the Facebooks, the TikToks of the world, they're gonna start producing content and start buying studios too. And it's so powerful that I think the role of the storyteller is just as powerful, right? And speaking truth and taking the time to combat the hatred that's going on in our country. You know, a lot of people don't know this, but David Duke, the so-called, glorified leader of the KKK, just 3 years ago had a platform on TikTok. Had a platform on Twitter, that's now X. And talk about representation matters. It took a Latina who was hired at Twitter as an attorney there to finally listen to us. And within months, he was canceled, not suspended like Trump, he was canceled. And because they said he didn't break their policy, right? That's how important policy is. They didn't break the policy. And then we said, well, change your policy. And they changed their policy. And then within 3 days, he broke it because he was very clever and he would, clever on what he was saying, but then he would talk about his podcast. And on the podcast, you click on it, you just hate everyone, women, everyone. And I think about that because that's content. That is content, and that's storytelling. So I think storytellers play a vital role in this country and can really lead us in the right direction. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. I 100%. I take my job extremely seriously because, to your point, like I'm in the room to make sure that we are not increasing that, right? And so I am so happy about this year at Amazon Studios. We just launched our social media handle specifically for Latino audiences, Primero Latino, which is Latinos first, where if you go to Primero Latino, you can see the breadth of Latino stories that we're telling. To me, that's really important, right? To your point, where as long as there's a community where we're telling everything, we're not just telling one story, we're telling all of these stories. Like, we can have Latino gang members, we can have them, but that shouldn't be the only thing we have, right? We shouldn't only have, the only time you see a Latina is if she's a singer. Like, she can just, I think of Real Women Have Curves, and I think of that, like, it was just such an amazing story and things like that. So I'm really happy to be at Amazon right now, and I'm hopeful that this is not just this year, that we continue our commitment to showing so many different stories of Latinos. So no matter where you're from, who you are, you can see yourself represented on screen. And I think that's really what's important, to ensure that we are never giving into a single stereotype, and instead we are really showing the breadth of the diversity of the Latino community that we see here, right? Like, there's so many of us, and I think that's what our content is showing today, and I am so excited for it to continue to show that.
Just to add to what Jerome said, I think storytelling, to Brenda's earlier point, is a path to empathy.
Yeah.
And by having those stories out there, it allows others to see a world that maybe they may not be exposed to. With that comes great responsibility, both on our side as people that help shepherd the content creation, and also putting ourselves in the perspective of the audience. So although it's our responsibility to shepherd the content, we are doing it with the lens of, we need to have those voices represented that otherwise wouldn't be. So again, to Jerome's point, I think that's exactly how we need to characterize it.
If I can add, one of the things that we need to get into is the publishing industry. And many films are made from books.
Yeah.
So NHMC led this year, and ANALIP is one of the other members, and 5 other organizations. We opened up the Latino Representation in Publishing Coalition, and we've actually met with 5 of the top major publishing companies, the CEOs, top CEO, and we're getting a really good response. I'm really excited about where we're going to go next year with the publishing industry.
I'm excited too. I need to see more Olga Dies Dreaming. I don't know if you read that. It was amazing. I want to read more of those, so please.
I'll be pushing for that.
Okay.
Jerome.
Thank you.
I got your back.
I appreciate it.
All right.
And we can sell them on Amazon. So.
Thank you all for your questions. We are at the end of our time, but I want to give you all an opportunity to make any closing remarks that you'd like to make. I'll start with you, Margie.
We've hit on a lot of topics this afternoon, but one thing that I want to make sure we take away is that moving the pendulum forward up that hill that is very hard to do requires a 360 approach. What I mean is, we need studio executives to be representational of the audience. We need content creators to bring the perspective to make sure that those stories are authentic. And we need audiences to activate through campaigns and organizations led by organizations such, again, as NHMC, NALIP, and the many others. It's a full 360 approach. Without one of those, we do not succeed. And you in this room are vital to that, because you represent all of them together. So that's my takeaway.
Love it.
I'll try to make this really quick. I have 3, but I'll make it really, really quick, I promise. I would say, number 1, exactly what you're saying, like, audiences, please, please, please go see the things that we're putting out. You matter, your voice matters. Engagement matters as well, so don't just watch it, engage with it, tell your friends, go online, comment, be on the TikToks, like, do all of that, please, for us. The second thing I would say is, again, we talked about a lot of things up here, and I think one of the things we were talking about for you when we were talking about like don't choose fear, or like don't be afraid. What I wanted to say is I do see a lot of people in this room that I presume are leaders, and it's your responsibility to ensure you're creating the environment to where your employees and your colleagues feel safe to mess up. So think about that. Again, when you talk about empathy, like how are you creating an environment for people to mess up, say the wrong thing, apologize, and then come back, right? And then the last thing I'd say is that I'm so excited to hear, because we said it multiple times, and what I love about the Latino community specifically is you heard us talk about at least 3 or 4 organizations that are working together to do this. This is not a zero-sum game. When we put our voices together, that's how we ensure that the dominant culture is not the only culture that we see on camera. So please, please, please work with each other, because that's the only way, as you said, that boulder is going to go up that hill. We are better than just one of us.
So just support Latino-led films and series. I know it costs money to go to purchase films, but we can do it. You need the audience. I mean, we are 20% of the population, you know, $1.7 trillion. I mean, we can make and break films. We have the power. United, we have the power. So let's do it. Let's just continue to do it. And support through social media. It doesn't cost you anything. Support. And social media is so powerful now. It's the game changer. I mean, it's changing, you know, people's beliefs and support it. That's all.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all. I think this panel was a great reminder to me, especially through my own career, that my Latinidad is always a superpower. It's not a hindrance.
Yep.
And growing up, I used to think it was a hindrance, but then I came into my own power and have found my career through my Latinidad, and I think you all have done the same as well. So I want to thank you for your time and for all the great advice even you've given me and the rest of us. I want to thank all of you. I know it's been a long day. You've been here for many hours and learned a lot of information, but thank you very much. I hope you found it to be informative, enriching, all the things. And please keep the conversation going. Hashtag CHCIHHM23. A lot of letters, but you got it, I promise. And join us for day 2 tomorrow for our opening plenary titled Charging Ahead, Electrification, Infrastructure, and Transportation in Latino Communities. Thank you all again.
Thank you. Let's go celebrate.